All right, everyone, let's get going. I'd like to welcome you to the third and final CDE Per Jacobsson Foundation Speaker of this academic year. We greatly appreciate the support we've been given by the Per Jacobsson Foundation, an institution honoring Per Jacobsson, a Swedish economist who was managing director of the IMF during critical years, including 1960, the year that was the founding of the CDE. Per Jacobsson Foundation is led by a talented and experienced group of economic policymakers from around the world, including two who have been generous enough with their time to teach CDE fellows, Ted Truman and Nancy Birdsall. So thank you very much to the Per Jacobsson Foundation. And thanks to all of you who braved the monsoon and the early hour to get here from your lengthy commute. It's with great pleasure today that I'm introducing Aban Haq. Aban is from Pakistan and from the CDE class of 2006. She will talk today about her career in several different institutions. In fact, that may be selling it short, because I think in the time that we have known you, you have worked for 6 or possibly 7 institutions, depending on how one counts. Currently, she's with the Alliance for Financial Inclusion, based in Malaysia, where her jobs include head of the project management office and head of member engagement, and some other things, but we'll leave that for later. Tomorrow she'll be interviewed by Professor Jerry Caprio about current trends in financial inclusion. As I said, Aban has seen financial inclusion and economic policy from many perspectives. From the academic side, she has an additional degree from Oxford University, but she also taught in Pakistan. She's worked in a central bank, a finance ministry, several NGOs, then also as a development consultant, and she's had time to raise 2 sons. So even when she was here, we could tell that there were several things special about Aban. One, she was patient. We admitted her first to be in the class of 2004, and then she didn't get to study here until 2006. And she still wanted to come. Resourceful. We didn't have funding then, so she went and won a Fulbright scholarship and came here anyway. So that was great. Specialized knowledge. Before she came to CDE, Aban had taught a course that used the Gruber textbook, which, that monumental volume many of you kept under your pillow. Responsibility. There was orientation then. It wasn't quite as long, but even in early September, Aban emerged within her class as one of the more responsible members. The CDE class used to face in the other direction. We had some chalkboards that were original to the building. They were old and out of date and somewhat fragile. So sometime between 6 p.m. and 8 a.m. the next morning, as you all well know, things happened here that the staff was not aware of. And I don't know what it was and don't want to know. But somebody bucked up and wrote an early email that, by the way, one of the chalkboards was broken. And I don't know how they selected Aban to do this, but it said something. I'm not sure exactly what it said, but it said something. And then finally, helpfulness. We didn't always have teaching assistants. You all have met the first person who was teaching assistant, Pablo. I think you met him.
No, we did not.
Anyway, you may have heard about him. But the idea had to come from somewhere. The only problem with Aban as teaching assistant was that we didn't pay her. So I guess that was really more her problem and not ours. But I'd like you to join me in a warm welcome for Aban as she talks about her career across many institutions. Welcome.
Thanks, Tom, for that welcome. It's really good to be here, and thank you so much for making the effort to join us this morning. As Tom said, I'm back in Williamstown and CDE after 19 years. It's quite a long time, a lifetime almost. Like he said, I came here with no kids, and now I have two teenage boys. It feels quite incredible. But before I start talking about my career, I think I really need to thank the CDE team, especially to Tom, to Lisa, Carmen, Rachel, and to Professor Caprio for making it possible for me to come back. I think it's not because of lack of wanting to come back, but lack of the opportunity that I couldn't be back here. If it was up to me, I would be visiting quite often. So it's really, really fantastic to be here, and let me just congratulate. I know graduation is still a few days away, but I'm sure most of you, if not all of you, are going to make it. So congratulations. Congratulations to the class of 2025, which I think is going to go on to do some incredible things and to really make a big impact in all the countries that you come from. And that I say from my experience and what I've seen my CDE classmates do over the years and accomplish and contribute to their countries over the years. So this is not just a nice to say thing, it's really true, and we are going to see that materialize hopefully in less than the next 19 years. Okay. So I guess when I was coming here, it was a moment of great anticipation for me. I was super excited, but slightly nervous. I mean, I know Tom has not changed. He looks exactly the same that he did. He will look exactly the same. Same for Professor Caprio as well. But of course, I anticipated things would be different. I mean, 19 years is a long time, so I expect things would change. What would it feel like to be back here? And I think I was asked this question yesterday by a couple of people as well. Does it feel different? Is it, how do you like being back? And I think my sentiment is actually what I think Q said yesterday. You know, the more things change, it almost feels like the more they stay the same. And that's actually exactly how I feel being back here after all this time. A lot has changed. This building, for one, for the better, of course. And I think you guys are fortunate and lucky to be in such a fantastic space, upgraded from when we were here. So yeah, the building has changed. The town has changed a little bit. So I'm staying at Williams Inn, which is in the wrong place. I don't know how it got there, when it got there. I was certainly not expecting it to be there. The Clark looks fantastic, even better than it did. So even the program has changed. It has a new name. It was not called a master's in policy economics when I was here. So it was development economics at that time. But yet, despite all those changes, it feels very familiar. It feels like home. After all, it doesn't feel like so much time has lapsed between when I was here. And I wonder why that is. And I think it's because, in my view, it's because the mission and the purpose of the institution has not changed. It's the ethos, or we use this word a lot at where I work now, the DNA. Yeah? So I think institutions, even towns, even people have a DNA. And that has not changed. It still feels like home. it still feels like the same warm, welcoming space that it felt like so many years ago. And it's because of that consistency in values, in purpose, and in mission. And I think when I look at my career, it's kind of like that. So Tom said I worked in several institutions across, different types of institutions. And since they asked me to talk about my career, and who doesn't like to talk about themselves, and now you can't take it back, it's done. So I'm going to talk a little bit in the next maybe 25 to 30 minutes about my journey and how that journey has taken me across institutions, across countries, but yet in its mission or its purpose, I think there is a consistent core. And that is what connects these different roles and responsibilities that I've been given over the years. So that's what I'm going to talk about. And I hope you will find some relevance in my story for your own journeys. I don't bore you this morning, you don't fall asleep. I don't see any coffee supply, so too late. I do believe there's lunch afterwards, so you can look forward to that. So when I thought about how I would spend this time, I've kind of split my journey into 3 phases, 3 stages. The first one I'm choosing to call origins and aspirations. And that is going to be about the time before CDE and coming to CDE. So that's one part of my journey. The next one is the kind of 10 to 15 years post CDE, which I'm choosing to call detours and discoveries. Yeah, so that's detours and discoveries. And then we come to the last stage, which is about the present, what I do now. And that is going to be the here and now. And for each of them, I'm going to offer some reflections in terms of what I think I take away from those experiences in those different stages of my life. And I hope you will find this interesting. I also hope you will have questions, but we can hold on to them till the end if you don't mind. Yeah. Okay, everybody is on board? Yeah, following me so far? Okay, not so sleepy. Okay, so let's start with Act 1. Act 1 is origins and aspiration. So I think, at least in my culture in Pakistan, a very common question that young adults are asked, even actually, I don't know why people do that, but even 5-year-olds are asked this question. What do you want to be when you grow up? Yeah, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I don't know what I wanted to be when I grow up at 5 or 10 or 15. I'm sure it changed, as it would have probably changed for many of you, maybe not for all of you. But I'm not so sure many of us imagine we will be economists when we are 5 years old. Yeah, I don't think that's really what we want to do. So, but what I remember as being a consistent aspiration throughout my conscious young life, I think there are two aspirations which stayed with me. The first was the aspiration to study at a leading university or college abroad, preferably in the United States. And I don't know where that came from. Maybe it was an overdose of reading, I don't know, high school novels based in some high school in the US or sitcoms or whatever. But I think that aspiration was quite strong, and it was something I knew I would want to do. And I think the other aspiration, and I think it makes great sense, and it should feel that way when one is young and innocent, is to change the world, yeah, to make an impact. And I think a lot of that aspiration came from my mother, because she worked in the United Nations, so she worked for UNICEF. And I had the opportunity to travel with her to, these remote schools. You climb down a mountain, 1 kilometer, 2 kilometer, to reach a remote school with no electricity, very limited facilities. And I think that brought out the difference in privilege, and to recognize the kind of privilege that I was growing up and which was missing for millions and millions, and the majority in at least my country, in Pakistan. So I think those were the kind of 2 aspirations that I had. But I absolutely had no idea about the how. How is this going to happen? Okay, So I grew up in what at that time was a small town, Rawalpindi. You know, Google and all these YouTubes, etc., didn't exist in this magnitude at that time, and it was very difficult to access information and to have this breadth of knowledge that can help you and shape you and make decisions, help you kind of convert some of your thinking into action. So anyways, I was at university. I was studying economics at the Quaid-e-Azam University in Islamabad, and ended up having a conversation that I think changed my life. And that was a conversation with one of my teachers, who was a CDE alum and a Fulbrighter. And she was teaching us, I think, a course in development economics. And one day she just said to me, you know, why don't you think about applying for the Fulbright program? I had no idea what the Fulbright program is. And you know, you can think about going to Williams. I was at the CDE, it's a fantastic program, and I mean, it was completely out of the blue, something I had never even thought was possible, and I got super excited and I couldn't believe it. And as soon as I came home, the first person I told this, you know, fantastic about this conversation was my mom. Yeah, so, and of course I expected her to be equally excited, but she was not. Yeah, she was not. Her reaction was very unexpected, something I had not anticipated. And she was like, oh my God, what do you mean you're going to go abroad? When are you going to get married? What is this? So I was quite shocked by that response, something I was absolutely not expecting from someone who had worked in international development for 25 years. But there you go. Anyways, to cut the long story short, we got over that conversation slowly and gradually. I think she adjusted to the idea and I kind of adjusted to her expectations. And like Tom said, it wasn't like CDE happened immediately for me. So I applied for the Fulbright, and CDE was kind enough to accept me before that. In the meantime, I also finished my degree and got a job at the State Bank of Pakistan, moved to Karachi. Also a big move for me, encouraged by my mother. I think she just felt guilty. So anyways, I ended up there. And then I finally, after a long wait, managed to come here to the CDE. And I think you know, the experience here has been a great, again, one of those monumental years in my life. You know, it's less than a year, a short time that you spend here, but the impact that it had on me has been really, really tremendous. It was a year of many firsts for me. Maybe the world is much smaller these days. It has shrunk, so you know, exposure to cultures and different frames of thought is much easier to have. But for me, it was my first opening to the world, in a way. It was my first solo travel outside Pakistan. It was my first interaction with people who didn't look like me. Yeah, so it was my first time that I met people from Africa, from South America, from even Asia. So it was really it opened the world for me. It was also my first encounter with a double espresso, thanks to Deb. But that's a story for another time, and I would be very happy to share it with you, yeah? But it left an impression as well. Let's just put it that way. So I think being at the CDE, I won't talk much about the year here, but you've just gone through it yourself. I think that taking that opportunity and being here, it transformed my worldview. It changed me as a person. And I think it, as a professional, it opened doors for me which I didn't know existed, or perhaps would not have opened if I had not come to the CDE. So I think it was a very significant period of my life. And so that's where we stop with the first phase, which is origins and aspirations. So when I look back or I reflect at this time, what kind of jumps out at me? What really jumps out at me is that one conversation, one person can really change the course of your life. And it was that conversation in my university with my teacher that changed the course of my life. And what is our responsibility or our job in that moment, I guess, is to have the courage to take that opportunity and to embrace it. So I'm very happy I did that, and I could be part of this fantastic community here at CDE. Okay, so then CDE, this great fantastic bubble ended sooner than I would have liked it to. And then in 2006, I moved back to Pakistan after finishing my program here. What I was pretty clear about when I left here, even before I came here, like I said, I wanted to make a difference. I wanted to do something meaningful in life, professionally. So, and to me, the most obvious answer was to work in government. And the reason is that in my context, and I'm sure it's applicable to many of your contexts as well, we have complex, big-scale challenges in our countries. Yeah. So, and I believe, and I still believe quite strongly, that the public sector and the government has a key role to meet challenges at scale. Yeah. And you can do little things, but the scale of the challenges requires, public policy. So I joined the Ministry of Finance. I got an opportunity to join, and it was obviously exactly what I wanted to do. It was my entry into government at the heart of economic policy. But it didn't work out. It's like some relationships that you think would work out great, but they don't. In just 9 months, I realized that it was not the right fit for me. So sometimes when we think, imagine how our jobs will be, our role will be, they don't always turn out like that. So very quickly, I realized as a young kind of professional who had just come back from a CDE, and I don't know if you've ever driven on a motorway and then you hit like a dirt track, it kind of felt like that. Here I was on this highway at the CDE, and now things have kind of slowed down too much for me, and I was not ready for that. So, but that's okay. An opportunity came for me to join a very small organization, 6 people, called the Pakistan Microfinance Network. This was in 2007-8, I think. It's a not-for-profit, an association of microfinance service providers in the country. And at that time, the microfinance sector was really big. It was the time when the UN had declared the year of microcredit in 2005. Muhammad Yunus had just won the Nobel Prize for his work with Grameen Bank. And the sector was really in its infancy in most countries, and there was a lot of work in opening it up or opening up the opportunity. So it was a fantastic place to be. I worked there for a few years, and I really think that was a very important part of my life as a young person, because it exposed me. On one end, we used to work with the state bank, which is the central bank of the country, on policy. Yeah? So I saw how policies made at that level translated into market development, opening up the market to new entrants, how that translated into competition, what were the good outcomes and the bad outcomes of the way the market developed. I also, on the other side, had the opportunity to visit some of the communities in which the microfinance providers were working with the micro entrepreneurs, women taking the loans. So it was really, I think, a great experience for me to see how a sector develops and its successes and also its failures. How can we learn from them? And then I went on to, as Tom referred, depending on how you count, to a few different organizations. I had the opportunity to work with the International Growth Center, which is a research-based organization, also working with government bodies, connecting them to researchers to create evidence-based and research-based policies. I also took a detour. You know what we call this phase, right? Detours and discoveries. So detour to work with an education fund. What was I doing in an education fund? Interestingly, my role there was kind of linked to what I was already doing. So this was, you know, education, access to education and quality of education is also a huge challenge in Pakistan. So we were providing grants and access to capital to service providers in the education sector to help them develop products and services to improve the quality of education, access to education, collect data on education. So it was a detour, but not too much off the track. Yeah. And I did that, worked in these different organizations till 2015, which was again a crossroads moment for me. And the crossroads was that the education project that I was working on was coming to an end. And there was an option. I already had a fantastic job to take up. A new organization was set up in Islamabad with very generous funding from, at that time it was DFID, which is UK aid now, so funding from the UK government, and the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. And the organization was set up to drive access to SME finance as well as to promote digital finance in the country. But it was a kind of, now that I look back, like a personal crisis moment for me when I thought about that job. And I thought, is this it? Am I going to spend the rest of my life in Islamabad working with the same 30 people in the financial inclusion sphere? It's great work, but I had been to the CDE, I had seen the world. So it felt a little bit limiting to me at that time. So again, I decided to take a break and return to my favorite place, which is a university. Yeah, and that is when I again got fortunate. I was able to get a scholarship and go and spend 2 years at Oxford University. And I did my MPhil in development studies. Again, a very different experience from CDE in terms of the academic approach, in terms of the program itself. Very, very rewarding experience for me, and people back home couldn't understand why I was doing this. Yeah, who does this? You have a great job. I mean, you have 2 little kids, and you're comfortable here, settled as we call it back home. Why give up all that and go back to being a poor student on a limited stipend and 2 kids and a husband tagging with you? Like, this makes no sense. But I think those choices, it was really driven by what I enjoy the most, and that is really being in environments like this, which is multinational, multicultural, which opens the world instead of narrows it down. So that's, I was at Oxford, and then I went back to Pakistan, and lo and behold, I could join Karandas, the new organization. Nothing had changed. I could go back. I took up a position there. I was the head of the innovation fund there and monitoring and evaluation. So we set up a fund where we used to give grants to innovators, to fintechs, to banks to test new products and services. But I guess what I was most proud of doing there, I was there for 2 years, was to set up, I think, a first of its kind fund for women businesses, women-led businesses and women entrepreneurs to improve access to finance for them. And I'm very happy to see that program still exists, and it's grown and evolved, and I think it was really a fantastic project, and I had the opportunity to curate it and to launch it, and that it has grown beyond that. And in 2019, very randomly, I came across this job on LinkedIn with this organization called Alliance for Financial Inclusion. I didn't know much about AFI, that's what we call the Alliance, and but the job looked so similar to what I was doing. I thought, I can do this with my eyes closed, yeah, and it's an opportunity to again work at a more global scale, move to a different country. As you know, I don't like to be in my comfort zone, that's pretty clear by now. So I thought, yeah, this looks easy, but it was advertised as a short-term position, 9 months. I couldn't move my family for just 9 months and couldn't leave them behind. My kids were still young at that time. So I asked them, why just 9 months? You know, why don't you think about increasing the duration? And they did that. And so they offered me a 2-year contract, and then I kind of took a leap of faith. I had never been to Malaysia before, but how bad could it be? I mean, seriously. And I knew very little about AFI. What I could see was, like I said, the job looked easy, and I think I was ready for easy by then. But also its mission, the work it did, it worked on policy. It's a member-based organization. Members are central banks, ministries of finance. So again, because it worked at that level where I think the impact and the outcomes can be the greatest, it looked very appealing, very attractive. It was a global kind of organization. And so I thought I will take this leap of faith, and that's what I did. And in 2019, I moved to Malaysia and took up not my current role, I had a different role at that time, and I joined AFI. And so that brings me to the end of the second phase, which is detours and discoveries. So what did I discover? Again, when I reflect back at those years, what are my takeaways? I think the first one is that careers are not ladders. So we are led to maybe think that a career is linear, you're rising up, it's a narrow path where maybe you need to shove some people off to climb up higher. That's not my experience, and I think of careers more like landscapes. It has many pathways you can walk down. Some are pretty clear, pretty obvious. You can take those, you can meander off to certain unknown pathways. But as long as you stay curious, you are guided by a North Star, a purpose, I think they all lead up to the right destination or the right place. So I think it's okay to explore that landscape and to walk the different paths instead of thinking that success is only manifested in a certain vertical direction. The other important lesson I take from this period, which is most of my professional career, is that the personal and the professional, especially for me as a woman, are not as separate as we like to think. Our personal circumstances have a huge influence on the decisions we take as a professional. And that's okay. I think they can be a source of frustration. Maybe there's something out there you want to do, but just not possible to do it at this stage. And for me, I think I have learned that if you accept the circumstances, you can actually mold them into something that leads to a good outcome for you. So for me, at least, my personal and professional, I no longer believe that they are as distinct or they can stay as separate as we would like to think. Okay, are you still with me? Yes? Okay, great. Good. So now we enter into the last here and now, Act 3. That doesn't mean this is it. I still have a long way to go. But we kind of stop where I am right now. No way am I implying this is the last act. So the here and now. So the last 6 years, I have been at AFI. Like I told you, when I took the job, it looked super easy, very close to what I was doing in Pakistan, and it was easy. I really was having a good time. And then COVID happened. You remember that time? Anybody remember that time? Hard to forget. I think the world as we know it changed forever after that. So COVID happened, and I was tasked to lead the COVID response initiative at my organization. And it was a hugely stressful endeavor. I'm sure if you were working at that time, we all thought, okay, lockdowns, less work. No, definitely not. much more work. And it was a very difficult time. I had just moved to Malaysia. I was there with my kids. I didn't know the country, didn't know many people, and here I was. It was a very strict lockdown in Malaysia. You couldn't go out except to buy groceries and to maybe take a walk, and I couldn't go out. And the work quadrupled. And I was given this task to manage the COVID-19 response, which meant we had to mobilize funding. We had to pivot the way we do our services. Everything had to be changed to online. We had to change the agreements we had with our funding partners. I mean, whatever we had planned was no longer possible. But I think, and perhaps you would agree, crises also present opportunities. And I think for me, it was personally and professionally, it really was the opportunity where I put my hand up and took the responsibility. And that led to greater things in my organization. It led to an expansion in my role. More than perhaps I would like, as Tom said. I now have different portfolios that I manage. I look at the strategy and planning in AFI. I look after our project management office and member engagement. I'm also part of the governance team, so I have the opportunity to not just work in the organization, but to inform or contribute to major institutional decisions as well. So I think it's been a great 6 years. It doesn't feel like 6 years, to be honest. And what's most rewarding for me working at AFI is, of course, that I continue to work for a bigger mandate of financial inclusion policy, where we are trying to create more inclusive, equitable financial systems. But I think as an organization, why I find it rewarding, is also because of how it's structured. You know, we have 90 member institutions. Most of them are central banks or ministries of finance from emerging and developing countries, from 84 countries. And what's different about AFI is that it's based on a governance framework of equity. So irrespective of a country's size or their economic status, they have an equal vote in the decisions that are taken in the organization. They are equally responsible and accountable for the future of the organization. And for me, that model led by the emerging and developing economies, where they decide the priorities and what the institution will look like, I think is a major, very rewarding to be part of that and to see that institution being shaped by these countries in a more equitable governance model. So that's where I am now. And what are the lessons of the last 6 years? I think I mentioned one already, which is the power of showing up and to raise your hand. Yeah, do not be afraid of saying yes to things or projects or challenges which feel unfamiliar, a little bit scary as well. Because there are people who help you, and they come together and things work out, but they translate into tremendous opportunities of learning and professional growth. And I think a more recent lesson or reflection that I have, maybe you'll share this with me, is that our work is unfinished. Yeah. Public service, working in policy, especially if you work in international development, can sometimes be quite frustrating. You can spend your lifetime trying to achieve positive outcomes or change, and then one political decision beyond even maybe national borders, or a conflict, a war breaks out, can undo and set you back decades. Yeah, so I think the gains that we make as economic policymakers who are trying to promote inclusive growth, prosperity for your people, whether it's me working to change financial systems for more inclusivity and to be more relevant to majority of the world's people, these gains that we make cannot be taken for granted, and these values and this progress needs to be safeguarded vigilantly. And just to close, am I out of? Okay, I'm okay on. And so just to finish up, I truly believe that, as I believed many years ago, when I was naive and innocent. It turns out I was not so wrong, at least that view has not changed, that the public sector, governments, international organizations have a tremendous role to play, and its leaders, and you will be those leaders, that's just a fact. Many of you will be governors, ministers, advisors to prime ministers, etc. I feel it's really important for these leaders and shapers to recognize the value in global communities and in openness and in global cooperation. I think that's a very powerful force for good in the world, and programs like CDE play such an important role in cultivating that ecosystem. They invest in capacities and knowledge of emerging policymakers like yourselves, like me many years ago, in recognizing the value of good policy and the change that it can bring in this world. So the year here definitely shaped my worldview and my life and my career, and I think it's going to be the same for you. And I look forward to hearing from many of you 20 years from now, when you will be here, and hopefully I will have an opportunity to listen to your stories. Thank you very much for listening to me and welcoming me back to the CDE. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Aban. Of course, now question time. So we'll turn the microphone around, but we're going to practice question inclusion today. So please limit yourself to one question at a time.
Oh, I see he's looking at
right.
some people.
You may get in your two, but we'll go to some other people before that. Please say who you are as well and where you're from. And
don't be
have
shy.
at it.
Okay, you looked at him, he's the first one. Should I go with him?
Multiple questions.
Oh, okay, I'm warned already. Yes.
Thank you very much for your inspirational speech. My name is Nur Sultan. I am from Korean Republic.
Ah, okay.
Yeah, and I have a question regarding financial inclusion. And nowadays, we know that financial inclusion is one of the main indicators of economic development, especially for developing countries. And as you are doing now, as you're working on this, I'd like to ask, what was your big achievement where you could implement what you wanted in particular country, and then you failed?
Oh, okay. Yeah. Okay, so let's start. Should we take a couple of questions and then answer, or?
It's your show.
Okay, let me respond to you. I think let's start with the failure, because that's pretty clear to me. Successes are usually less clear to me. The failure, I think, of course, not my personal failure. That I'm not sharing while I'm being recorded. But what I can share with you is what I think was one of the challenges or failures that we faced, which several other countries faced when microfinance was growing. So I think it was around 2000, I don't remember clearly now, but maybe 2008 or 9, when we had a microfinance crisis in Pakistan. And actually this crisis happened in many countries. In India, I remember also a similar crisis, and that was a crisis of over-indebtedness. And the problem was that one of the key metrics for success of microfinance institutions and the sector as a whole was the scale that they can achieve. Because like I said, for example, Pakistan is a country of 230 million people now. So you need scale to demonstrate success of a policy or of an intervention. And I think there was this razor focus on achieving growth in the sector. And that meant that we had entry of new institutions, funneling of funding into the microfinance sector, and very rapid growth of the microfinance sector. But what that led to, in the absence of the appropriate infrastructure like credit bureaus, that you ended up having a lot of people who took on more debt than they should have. And these are people who are anyways most financially vulnerable. They could least afford to be over indebted, the poor and the low income segments of society. And that's when we had a kind of a systemic crisis where you saw defaults on microfinance loans start to increase quite rapidly. And microfinance sector was always kind of advertised as a sector where default rates are quite low, and most repayment rates are quite high. And microfinance institutions and banks are also don't have the deep pockets that some of the big commercial banks or the large financial institutions have. So for them to incur the loss that was coming from these non-performing portfolios, it had a huge impact on those institutions. So I think that was a lesson for the sector about responsible lending. That if you're going for growth, it can be counterproductive if you don't have the right infrastructure and systems in place for consumer protection, consumer education. So that, I think, for my career, I clearly remember as a lesson. Yes, please.
Just a two-hander, since we're going to be talking all about financial inclusion in detail tomorrow, you might want to give a little priority to
personal questions,
sort of issues today.
So success, I will talk about tomorrow. I answered 50%. 50%.
Yeah, okay, but
You're done.
no, clarification. 2008, 2009. It means it's related to GFC, right? Great Financial Crisis.
Not so much in Pakistan, but we come back to it tomorrow.
Okay.
Yes, please. What was
So you talked a lot about moving from organizations, and I think personal fear of money or something I don't like is like learning, like being the new person and being the one who doesn't know where the coffee machine is. What are some of the things you can share in terms of how to adapt quickly when you join a new organization? And I know you also mentioned that you joined the ministry and realized that this was not the place for you. How do you manage that? Because you move maybe from somewhere where you probably think, okay, maybe I was doing better work there, but I'm now here. How do you make the most out of such decisions?
Yeah, I think I also learned over time on how one can adjust to new organizations, because it's more than the coffee machine. Organizations have their own culture, their own language. When I joined AFI, I was drowning in acronyms. People talked about, they used, 3 acronyms in one sentence, and I had no idea what they were talking about. Similarly, they talked about, they would say, oh yeah, you're from Zambia, right? Oh yeah, Zambia has that grant and they're working on this project with financial literacy. I'm like, and then there's Estella in the Bank of Zambia and you have like 90 member institutions. How do these people know all this? So I think what I have, another thing, at least me personally, when I joined early in my career, new organization, I think you're also eager to make an impression and to justify your being there. But what I have learned is not to do that. Yeah, especially in the kind of institutions that we work in. For me now, what I've learned with time is to have more of a patient approach and to watch how the culture works, watch how the work relationships and the dynamics work, instead of being too eager to show my potential or to prove my worth or why I'm there. So my best advice to people who are moving to new organizations is, I think we place those expectations on ourselves. The employers don't expect us to, well, I hope not, to hit the ground like on day zero. So take advantage of that space to see how the dynamics work. And often those are not written anywhere. And to be accepted, I think it's good to be patient and take your time to accept. And your second question in terms of the ministry, of course, it was quite disappointing. And also I felt a little bit lost, right? Now, okay, this is what I wanted to do, and it turns out it's not something I want to do anymore. So then what's the alternative? And I think it would be completely false for me to say that, oh, I knew what I was doing when I joined the microfinance sector, and you know, kind of, I knew exactly, I mean, I didn't know I would work in microfinance or financial inclusion. It was more like, it looked like the right fit at that time. And so I took that. And I think for me, what that shows is, you may not, I mean, you think you have all the answers and your purpose and what you will be doing with your life all sorted when you leave CDE, but often things will not be like that. And there may be some regrets, but I think as long as you look forward and find what makes sense and then grow in that, I think that leads to a more content and happy career. Yes, please. Okay.
Okay. Good morning. My name is Jean Jaurès Kwame from Côte d'Ivoire. Thank you for your speech. It was very inspiring. And I have a question in, let's say, 3 phases.
Oh no!
I would like to talk a bit about the alumni network, because we had some alumni who came here, but we didn't hear more about this network. Personally, in your experience, I mean, after CDE, did this network play any role in all those changes? And second point, do you have any contribution currently, and what will be maybe your advice to us who will be new in this network? How can we maybe contribute or benefit, why not, from this network? Thank you.
Okay, I think I'm the wrong person to ask this question, but I will try to answer. I think, I don't know how this works nowadays, but initially, of course, people stay in touch and you have more kind of interactions, but then over time, in my experience or in our group, some of us stay more in touch than others. And more recently, in fact, I think it also has to do with the burden of work and the stage of life you're in. So there's too much going on with work and too much going on with family. So you kind of become more focused on what's on your desk to deliver, instead of recognizing the value of the rich network that you have. But more recently, I have reconnected with some of my classmates, and I think somebody asked me about this yesterday, I think one of the professors. And that is, I have to admit, not because of my initiative, but because of where I work. So in AFI, I've now had the opportunity to reconnect with some of my classmates who are in really significant positions, for example, in Nepal. I think there's someone here from Nepal. Yes, so Gunakar, we reconnected recently. Also with my colleagues in El Salvador, in Malawi, etc. So I think that the network, the alumni network, is quite a powerful professional support system for you, and it will really be up to you how much you use it. I don't know, Tom, do you guys have like an active platform? The problem is I am not on Facebook and on Instagram in this day and age, and that makes it a little bit harder, but I don't know if you want to talk about it.
We have a good amount of traffic on Facebook, but and then we have informal alumni groups in about 20 countries. Only a couple are starting to formalize how they run things.
Okay.
But you know, JJ, in Côte d'Ivoire, it's small and growing, so you can be a major contributor to that. And I told you 2 days ago which alum there you need to get to know better. So, anyway.
I think it'll depend on what you end up doing when you go back home, but I imagine there's a rich experience here. So national alumni, but also your own class, I think. Yes, please.
Thank you. It's interesting that we had worked in first Pakistan, then working in Malaysia. I think it's in terms of microfinance, there is a huge, short moral hazard in terms of investor and the borrower, because investor will try to charge higher interest rate and borrower will try to default. So in your position of using your power, how do you make it a win-win situation for the investor, also for the borrower?
Okay, this is a...
Can you repeat that?
Yes, but it's a financial inclusion question, so I'm not sure if I should answer it since the professor said. So the question was that in microfinance, we have a moral hazard problem where the investor is interested to make the highest return and the borrower would not like to pay back the loan. Basically, they would like to default. So how do you manage this, this conflict or this difference or this gap in objectives? I think based on what I have seen, a lot of investment has been made in strengthening the information to remove the information asymmetry from this relationship. And that has been brought about by investing in strengthening credit information, credit bureaus, and also in terms of strengthening regulation around consumer protection and recourse, grievance recourse. I think those have been kind of the two main policy instruments that have worked. I think also the difference is that at least in Pakistan, what we have seen is that initially when microfinance started, it was very much an unregulated, not-for-profit kind of activity driven by small NGOs and all that. And then as it was starting to grow and the government wanted it to grow, they brought in more regulation. So now it became a regulated sector with licensed institutions supervised by the central bank, which means a lot more vigilance, a lot more checks and balances that could be brought into place. Also access to platforms like the Credit Information Bureau that have improved the... So I have not seen or heard of a crisis like we had back in, I think 2009 or 10. But also the growth has slowed quite significantly because if the portfolio starts losing, then the investors also lose their money and they need to inject capital. Having said that, these institutions are very vulnerable. Like I said, they have low capital base compared to big financial institutions and banks. So when something like COVID happens or when something like a natural disaster happens, when it's not that the clients don't want to pay, they really can't pay because their crop has been wiped out or their livestock is washed away in a flood or something. So that is where the sector still takes a hit, and they're looking at mechanisms how you can bring in insurance and some protection kind of products. But I think the sector still remains quite vulnerable, especially given climate change and all these natural disasters, and they're very vulnerable institutions per se. Yes, please.
We share the same country as
Yes,
we know, and Gaza. So it was really nice to know all your inspirational, professional and personal story. My question is that, mostly people perceive that it is important to be in the government to bring the change. But hearing your story, like most of the things that you thought is unprecedented that you brought in your career as a contribution was in Karandaz or maybe now in Afi. So how do you think if you have to advise your younger self or also to the people who are just starting their career that to bring change, is it really, really important to be in the government or you can still bring the change otherwise?
Yeah, I think what's that English or I don't know, American proverb, more than one way to skin the cat. Is that what they say? Yeah, okay, I got that right. I think there are more than one ways to skin this cat and you can achieve impact in whatever you do. Yeah, as long as you're trying to bring a positive outcome at a small scale or at a large scale. And of course, you can be in government and not do anything. I mean, you can just sit there and have a whole career in the civil service and not achieve anything. Or you can work in a small NGO at the grassroots or at a meso type of organization like Karandaz and try new things and make a positive contribution to society and to whatever sector you're in. So I don't think personally that it only matters whether you're in government or in the not-for-profit sector or in the private sector. I think it's really how you define your purpose and what you want to do with the role and the responsibility that you have been given. Of course, the scale and the impact can be different, but as long as, I mean, personally, I think I find my pathway as satisfying as perhaps someone who has, you know, a role in, a more important role in the State Bank of Pakistan or something. But as long as you do something with the role and the position you're given, I think that's what counts.
Estella, again, I wanted to ask you, you mentioned a little about what happened with your mom when you decided to study abroad. And it strikes me that your culture may not be very different from mine.
Okay.
Was that the only encounter you had in terms of cultural expectations versus your own ambition? And then how was your, like, whose voice do you weigh the most if you are going to consider your decision versus expectation? And like going forward, how did it work out for you?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think in terms of the cultural context and where I come from, of course the encounter with my mother is a more drastic one, and the rest of it I think is more subtle. Yeah, it's not always what people will say or what they will do. It's more in terms of you know, how they behave or how they act in a more subtle way, and that's how I think culture can have an influence. So, for example, it was not unusual, and it is still not unusual today, for me to walk into a room where, you know, financial sector CEOs and all are sitting, and there's not a single woman in the room. Yeah, it's not uncommon. But that also gives me certain position of privilege. Yeah, I think I really did come from a position of privilege where my mother had done the hard work of, you know, breaking that ground for the next generation of women. That doesn't mean it's smooth sailing for the women that have come after. So I think for me also there were a few encounters which were more in your face, and the rest of it is a little bit more subtle. And my experience actually has been quite good. It has sometimes favored me as being one of the very few women at the table. So you know, you have a responsibility, but also a voice maybe that others don't. So yeah, and in terms of, I don't think I allowed it to hold me back much. I guess the best advice I could give to a young woman is to choose your partner wisely. Yeah, that's the best advice that I can give you if you are coming from a culture which is restrictive or a little bit makes it harder for you to. If you have the right support, you don't need too many people. You just need one or two champions. I think that will make all the difference. And I was really, really fortunate, I have been fortunate to have bosses who could see that. So I can tell you a story from the Pakistan Microfinance Network. So I had my first son in 2008. And it was a complicated delivery and all that. I had quite a tough time. And then I was expecting my second baby in 2000 to be delivered in 2010. And I panicked. Yeah, I said, I can't do this. This is not possible for me. I need to resign. Yeah, I have one small baby at home and another one coming. This cannot work. So I went to my boss and I said, I can't do this and I have to resign. And he said to me, why do you need to resign? This is before COVID, yeah, Zoom and all didn't exist. So he said to me, why don't you work remotely for 1 year? Yeah, you always have the option to resign, but just give it a try. Yeah, so there are people, he gave me examples of, you know, colleagues he had worked with in the US who live in one state and the office is another state. But this was Pakistan, right? A completely different context. But he said that to me, and he gave me that 1 year where I didn't need to travel and I could work from home, just come in for critical meetings, And that made all the difference. It means I didn't have to drop out of the workforce, and I could continue to keep working. And then after 1 year, I could go back and continue. So he was a guy, a Pakistani, local boss, but he could see that this should be something that shouldn't hold me back. So if you have a few champions along the way who can help you, I think that's what makes the difference. Yes.
Maybe one more question?
Yes.
So Aban, listening to you and other CDE alums, the role of luck, and actually maybe that's also relevant to selecting a partner, since there are information asymmetries in that area.
Absolutely.
But in getting back to career things, so it seems like you and a number of alums have had like different opportunities that have become available, and it was impossible to foresee when they were going to become available.
Absolutely.
But part of success is being ready to take advantage of those opportunities. And it seems like a common theme is working on something that you're really interested in and being productive, adding to your human capital. And if you're not adding to your human capital, actually I've heard it's often because you're actually not that interested in what you're doing, which suggests that's the time to move on.
Yeah.
But if you are meeting those two criteria, you're more in a better position to take advantage of new opportunities when they come up.
No, I would absolutely agree with that. And I firmly believe that everybody has a little bit of luck. No one can say, oh, I never got the opportunity, or no one ever gave me a chance, at least not at this level. Yeah, maybe there are, of course, people who don't have the kind of opportunities, but if you've made it so far, there are going to be opportunities down the road. And I really also believe that at that moment, you need to have the courage and it's a big word, but wisdom to see what this can lead to. And in that, exactly like you said, Jerry, you need to be a little bit true to yourself as well, in which opportunities you take, and be clear on why you're accepting them. Why is it attractive to you? Because of course the paycheck matters, but there are other things that matter as well. The culture, the mission, the purpose. Are you interested in the work? Because if all those, or at least most of them, don't align, like you said, your interest is not going to last much longer. So whatever, it can be different things. It can be the topic you're interested in, or the outcome you're interested in, or the organization you're interested in. It could be different things that hold your interest and make you invest in what you call, professional capital, and develop as a professional. But yeah, I really think without a little bit of luck and a little bit of courage, it's not possible to keep having exciting opportunities. You can have opportunities and lead a great career, but if you are looking for some exciting and meaningful work, then those need to align. Okay.
That sounds like an ideal ending point for today's session. Please join me in thanking Aban